welcome to my channel. So I recently guested at Animate Raleigh, and one of the, I would say the most frequent question I got asked was, how do you get started in cosplay? I thought I would turn that topic into a video that could be referenced for anyone else who has that question. And as always, as we go through the video, if you have any questions, make sure to put them down in the comments below. If you like this video, hit the like button, and of course subscribe for more content from me. I like to post progress updates on current competition builds, or in general, just things that I work on. I also like to give guidance on how to be a competitive cosplayer, which is typically what I do. I like to give behind the scenes experiences with guesting at cosplay conventions, and just all the good stuff that cosplay entails. So if that's what you're interested, subscribe. I post update typically every week and longer videos with my builds a little less frequently. A lot less frequently. It really depends on how long it takes me to actually make the piece. And then I also try to post little shorts weekly as well. So with that, I think we can just hop on into it. So you want to make your own cosplay from scratch. I'm going to take this from the angle of making a costume or cosplay of something that already exists, not like an original character, though you could always draw out your original character and plan that as well. But I'm just going to take it from the perspective of how I started, which was creating a costume from something that already existed. So you want to create it and you just don't know where to start. There's really no one path on the best way to begin, and there's many different skill sets that you might want to focus on that will be your starting point for learning that basic skill, such as learning to sew. So I'm going to approach this from my perspective, which I'm mainly a sewist. I guess I'm becoming more of a mixed media cosplayer at this point, but I would say my strength is in sewing, so I'm going to approach it more from there, but I will sprinkle in some things about foam smithing and whatnot. It all kind of works together in the end, but there really isn't an end-all be-all pathway for how to get started. The first thing I would recommend that you do is select the character that you want to cosplay. The type of character you want to cosplay can really inform how you begin. If you want to make a Sailor Moon costume, then you'll want to learn sewing. If you want to make a Baldur's Gate Lae'zel costume, you'll want to learn armor making, foam smithing, or warbler. If you're just more interested in wigs, you'll want to pick something that has an extreme wig. I don't know, the Hatsune Miku or something like that. So you just really want to pick the character that you want and isolate the main skill needed to accomplish building that character. I do recommend that you choose something simple to start if you've never created anything like this before. It will really help you understand the very basics of the skill you're trying to learn before you go off and try to do next level and additional complicated things. Don't be me. I started with a complicated one. I actually started with Ravenna from Snow White and the Huntsman, which is kind of fun because I just made a new Ravenna cosplay this past year, and it's kind of a redemption arc for me because I started with this one and made this one, and my skill level I think is night and day in those pictures, and I think they're about 10 years apart, so progress. But I chose Ravenna in this silver dress, and not only is this dress itself very complicated, the fabric is complicated. I actually never found anything like that fabric, and it might be individually sewn sequins or something, I don't know, but it has difficult fabric. It's not a standard pattern, it's rather unique, and there's not a lot of shots of this dress to give me a lot of detail of how to construct it. Now I know how to look at something like that and mostly figure it out, but back when I was starting, I had no idea. I'd never patterned a dress before, but that's what I chose because I think the movie was a year old and I was very excited for the character, and I chose what I liked. So I chose that. If I could go back, I would tell myself to make Sailor Moon instead. That would have been easier and taught me more than what I wound up doing for that Ravenna cosplay. Partway through, so I found a medieval pattern to make the base dress, and I just sort of winged the silver over thing, but I wound up sewing the bodice backwards, so the fabric shine is not the same. Halfway through, I realized that you could just hot glue this together. Why am I spending all this time sewing these panels together when I can just hot glue them? It's so much faster. you can't fix your mistakes if you hot glue, and it falls apart. So yay. And then like I hot glued all the trim on. I pretty much hot glued most of it. I am still proud of the crown though. Crown is made of construction paper and hot glue, but it looks really cool, I think. I sort of gave up halfway through and went on to the glue thing because it was beyond my skill set at the time. So choose something that is simple, that you can learn the basics of. So that experience is why I cannot recommend enough to start with something simple. Keep your frustration low and learn the basics. And make sure you choose something you love, because you are going to be spending a lot of time with that character. And if you can, find as many reference images as possible from as many angles as possible. It will really help you in figuring out what you need to do to replicate that build. So now that you have decided on the character that you want to make, you should isolate the skill that will be needed, the main skill that will be needed, or all the skills really, that will be needed to create that cosplay, and then list out the tools that you will need. Go through your house and see if you have anything on that list, and if not, you'll want to look around to see what you need to buy and make a budget. For me, I actually needed a sewing machine. I did not have one, so I went to Walmart and I purchased the cheapest Singer sewing machine on the market. I think it was $60 at the time. They do still sell cheap basic machines like that, and they're not bad to start on. I do know that can be a bit of investment for something that you don't even know that you will like doing or that you will want to stick with. Some people start in sewing and decide they don't like it and go straight into armor making and love that, or vice versa. So you can do things like go on Facebook Marketplace. It's an excellent place to find secondhand machines for a really cheap price. You can go to estate sales and yard sales. You can find things for really cheap. I actually sold my first sewing machine for 20 bucks at a yard sale a couple years after I had it, and I wound up upgrading. So just keep a lookout, maybe even eBay, and you can find a secondhand machine that you can start on for really cheap. Oh, and also make sure to check out your local community. Some places have areas that teach basic skills like sewing for free or for really cheap. In St. Louis, for example, they have a place called the City Sewing Room, which I cannot recommend enough. They host community workshops to teach people how to sew. You can get special classes for very, very cheap. You can even rent out the whole place and use all of their equipment and the fabric they have on hand in the price. I think it wound up being like $100 to rent it out for the day, is like 6 hours or so. But if you get a group of friends together, you can bring that cost down. I actually did that with several of my Mystic Guardian members, and we brought the cost down to I think $10 a person, which was not bad at all, to get to utilize everything that they have and get their guidance and expertise. Don't know where to start for community activities like that? Make sure you go to the library. They are a powerful resource for you. They could have sewing machines for rent or point you in the direction of any sort of community event that's happening that involves sewing or crafting of any kind. You never know. You never know. So always check out your library. Of course, you'll need a sewing machine. You'll need thread, you'll need fabric, all of that stuff. But that's sewing. So what if you wanted to go into foam smithing? You'll want to research the tools for that. I cannot recommend YouTube enough. Google how to get started in foam smithing. Search how to get started in foam smithing in YouTube, and you'll come up with a ton of videos that will give you what you need. I don't really do foam smithing, but I do know that you'll need things like a heat gun and a respirator, X-Acto knife, glues, sealants and paints and that sort of thing. So do a quick little search on YouTube and find out what you need. Wig styling, though, I will tell you, can be quite a bit more expensive. There are so many tools that you need. Shears, you need thinning shears, a crimper, hairspray, hair gel, Uhu glue, a needle and thread, curved needle preferably, a wig head stand, clips and pins and all sorts of steamer. However, you can get away with making a pretty decent wig with a lot of stuff that you have around the house. Really what you need is a steamer, which you can get a steam iron and you can use that. And you can get away with hairspray, you can get away with hot glue, you can use simple hairspray like Stronghold hairspray. I recommend Got to Be Glued. And you can get one of those cheap foam wig heads from like Michael's that are smaller than a normal human head. Wrap your own head like around the forehead and behind the ears in cellophane, and then wrap that in duct tape, and then draw your hairline onto that, take it off, cut it around the hairline, stuff it with newspaper and stick that on the wig head. Now you have a custom wig head to your own head size for like, I don't know, those things cost like $5 or so. super cheap way of doing that when you get started out. And then you can just stick those things on a dowel rod and you kind of have a wig stand. But the one thing I will say you should invest money in is a decent quality pair of shears. Proper, sharp shears will make and break your wig styling experience. It'll allow you to cut nice, clean, straight lines instead of chopping through the wig fibers, and it really will help you in the end. So that would be the one thing I say spend money on when it comes to wig styling. But again, do a search on YouTube, look at getting started in wig styling technique, start there, and then look through your house, see what you have, and then, you know, plan out your inventory list so that you can get started. But no matter what path you choose to explore, you will almost certainly need fabric, which that can quickly become the most expensive thing that you do. All those tools, you have them and you usually don't need to replace them, or you have like a can of hairspray that you use for quite a while before you do have to replace it. Fabric though, you buy for every single build and that cost can rack up so fast. And it depends a lot on where you source your fabric. So here's a few places that I like to purchase my fabric from. So of course, Joann's, everyone's favorite. They may be closing down, I don't know, but for now they're still open and it is a place to get fabric. They are one of my go-tos for specific things. I like to buy my muslin from them only with coupon. When it's on sale, I can buy it by the bolt, get a 10% discount on it, and if they have like a 20% off online order or pick up in store, that counts on top of the discount, so look out for their coupons. I also really like this 4-way athletic stretch they have in white. I use that for all of my Sailor Moon builds, but I just never buy anything full price there. I always use coupons, and I always order through the app or online, and I'll make multiple transactions so that I can use that 50% off a single full price item over and over and over and over again. I think if I remember correctly, I used to make my Sailor Moon costumes for about $50 to $75. Another favorite, which I think everyone will talk about, is fabrichwholesaledirect.com. I love this website. They used to have some inconsistency problems where if you ordered a swatch and then ordered the fabric, they wouldn't always match up. I have not had that problem in a while, but I still always order all the fabric I need at once so that I don't potentially have that problem in the future. But they are an amazing resource for specific types of fabric. I love their velvet. I think they call it micro velvet. Pretty cheap and it looks lovely. I'm using it on my Sakizo right now. It's a gorgeous velvet. I love them for bridal satin. They have a nice variety when it's in stock, and it's pretty decent quality. It doesn't look costumey. I also use them for organza. It's where I get all of my duck canvas from for my corsets. Don't buy their twill. Their twill is terrible. But yeah, like their organza is I think $2.99 a yard. The duck canvas is like $5.99 a yard. You really cannot beat their prices. So I highly recommend them for very specific things. And then the last company I will recommend is Mood Fabric. This is probably the most expensive one that I shop at. Well, I did just find Prime Fabrics in New York. They're very expensive, but that's a whole other story. But Mood Fabric has a range of prices from reasonable to outlandish. In their reasonable section, you will find some really great things. I love their satin. I think it's a matte satin. That's what I'm making these, this smocked fabric out of. They have like 46 different colors. It's a wider selection than Fabric Wholesale Direct, and honestly, it is better quality. It is $10 a yard, so you do have to decide when you want to use something like this, because Fabric Wholesale Direct satin is perfectly fine. I also really like their taffeta. It is the only place I buy taffeta from. I hate the taffeta on Fabric Wholesale Direct. They also have a ton of colors. It's $10 a yard, and it is stunning taffeta. That's pretty much what I order from them, but those are the 3 places where I recommend. Just make sure you order swatches, do a little bit of investigating, and buy muslin. Buy a lot of muslin. You're gonna need it, because if you're just starting out sewing, you should make a mock-up. Before you ever cut into your fashion fabric, make it out of muslin. You can get some really cheap cotton, or go to the thrift store and find a cotton sheet for really cheap, or go to Walmart and get like a cotton sheet. I think you can get them for as cheap as $4 or $5. Get your fabric, something cheap, something like cotton, and make a mock-up. I cannot stress that enough. It will allow you to learn how to make the piece you want to make and learn basic sewing skills and construction skills before you start on your fashion fabric. That way you don't have to replace your expensive fabric if you happen to make a mistake. And finally, the last thing I want to talk about is workspace. you will want to find a space in your home that is specific for your crafting. That way you can lay things out and plan things out without it really getting disturbed. You really only need one table, like a multi-use table for cutting, gluing, painting, etc. And a table for your sewing machine if you're going that route. I just personally hate to like put my sewing machine and pull it out again over and over and over because I am constantly sewing. So that's a lot for me. You could do it all on one table if you really wanted to. You don't have to go all out with that table. I have a cutting table behind me that I got at Joann's. I think this was a couple $100s, but it took me 10 years of cosplay before I invested in this table, and it's just okay. I like the grid on it though. What I actually started on was an old dresser that was about 6 feet long and maybe 2.5 feet wide and had drawers in it. It's one of those dressers that usually have a mirror on it, but my parents had taken the mirror off a long time ago. They were throwing it away, and so I got it for free, and that became my first everything table. I kept all my extra fabric and craft supplies in the drawers, so it actually worked out quite nicely. And then I kept my sewing machine on the island in between the kitchen and the living room area. Not my husband's favorite place for a sewing machine, but it worked, and that's where it stayed. And for a really long time, that's what I did. I went to one room and I did all my cutting and whatever, and I'd go out to the kitchen area and I would sew, and then I'd go back, and so on and so forth. I did that for a really long time until I moved and didn't have the space for it, and I wound up getting rid of that table. I wound up replacing it with another table I got for free from my in-laws, who happened to have something in their basement that they wanted to get rid of, and I took that, and that became my everything table. So just look around. You can probably find a free table or a really low-cost table from family or friends that want to get rid of something. Go to thrift stores. They sometimes have things for cheap or even free. Look around your local neighborhood of people wanting to throw things out and see if you can take it. Always ask permission, of course, but you can get a good secondhand table that is great for starting out on. So then the next thing about workspaces is the safety. Do this first and do not skip this step. I don't care what path you choose. You need a pair of protective eyewear. Just a simple pair of plastic goggles that completely cover your eyes and the areas around your eyes. So not sunglasses, these have to have extra guards around them. Purchase this even if you're only sewing. Protect your eyes. You can get eye injuries in sewing. For example, when I was sewing this Doctor Strange cape, this is one of my very earliest sewn pieces. I was sewing through rather thick fabric that was pleated up in this cape, and I exploded a needle because it was too much for the needle in my machine, and a little piece of that needle shot off of the fabric and hit me right below my eye and cut me a little higher up, and it would have been in my eyeball, and that would have been an entirely different disaster. I now wear protective goggles almost every time I sew, especially when running my embroidery machine. Anywhere in the room, I have found needle pieces 10 feet away from my machine. I don't let animals, my pets, around my machine, particularly when I am doing embroidery or sewing through very thick pieces of fabric. Thinner pieces of fabric, I'm a little more lenient on this, but protect your eyes. And if you're working with foam or armor, you have dust and stuff that kicks up, you always want to protect your eyes. Secondly, so my camera died when I was almost done with that video, so it's a different day, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish up quickly. Essentially, the last point that I left off on was talking about a respirator. Super important. You even use it when sewing because certain kinds of fray checks do have it labeled that you should not breathe in the fumes. So just keep that in mind, that I think you should always invest in a respirator. You can go to Lowe's, you can get one for $20, and then you just replace the cartridges every like 6 months or so. Or I saw someone else recommend to replace them every time you start a new project. Particularly if you're doing something with a lot of painting or sanding, so I thought that was really good advice. And don't forget, if you're working with resin, respirator and gloves, especially if you're going to be manipulating it before it's fully cured. That stuff should never be handled. It can cause things like an allergic reaction, even if you've never had one before, and then you could never get gel nail polish or touch resin again because you'll have an allergic reaction, or it's also a carcinogen, so just don't take the risk with your health. So you have all of your materials, you're ready to start, but you just don't know how. My last piece of advice for you is to go to YouTube. Search on YouTube for other cosplayers that have perhaps made the same thing that you have. A lot of cosplayers love to share what they do. They love to give like tutorials or walkthroughs of how they did it. I know I love to do that. You'll find almost everything that I make a long format video on my channel walking you through how I made it. It's absolutely not the way that you have to make it, but it will give you some idea on how to start a project. So I absolutely recommend looking for videos that match the cosplay you want to make, or look for something similar to what you want to make. Like say you want to make a Sailor Moon outfit and you need to make a pleated short skirt, but you can't find anything that walks you through how to make a Sailor Moon costume. I mean, that's not going to be the case. There are a ton of videos on YouTube on how to make a Sailor Moon fuku, but for this example, say you can't find it, then maybe look up how to make a pleated skirt, how to make a full pleated skirt, and go from there. I also recommend going to Joann's when they have their patterns on sale. They will often put them on sale for $1.99, and they like rotate out the brand. So like 1 week or two, it'll be Simplicity patterns that are $1.99. The next week it'll be like McCall's. Next week after that will be Butterick, or however they do it. But I tend to, well, I don't do it so much anymore since I started making my own patterns, but when I started, I would stock up on those patterns. I'd literally go through every drawer and pull out anything that I think I would possibly need for a cosplay I may want to make in the future. I have a stack of patterns I've never opened, but they're there in case I need them. And for $1.99, you can't beat it. And you can also get their really expensive cosplay patterns. They have specific ones. I think they're by Simplicity. Not just the Yaya Han patterns. They do have those. Those are by McCall's, but they have more expensive ones. They're like in a larger packaging. And they say cosplay across the front. Those I believe are like $25 typically, 20 to 25. They're a little more expensive than their normal patterns. Those are also on sale for $1.99, and I picked some of those up. Those are probably more useful for what it is that you're trying to do. Like look up the Yaya Han ones and then go for the cosplay ones, because they'll have things like how to make foam armor or how to make very unique looking pieces that you might be able to then match to what you are trying to make. And then look up how to make simple pattern alterations so that you can take something that's not quite right and form it into something that will work for the project that you want. That's how I got started, at least. Looked up how to read a pattern. I had a little knowledge from the one sewing class I took in high school on how to read patterns, and then I just messed with the pattern until it worked for what I wanted. So that's just kind of how I started. I also started with, when I really got into sewing, I did the Yaya Han Sailor Moon pattern. It is really good for starting out with making a Sailor Moon fuku, and the instructions were pretty easy to follow, so I highly recommend doing that. So I guess now I will go ahead and wrap this up. This is my long-winded answer for how to get started in cosplay, with some tips on how I got started and how I think that you could get started as well. It really boils down to taking the time to set up your workspace, making sure that you have all of the safety things that you need, and then narrowing down what you want to make and how you want to make it. So that's all I have for you today. Make sure to hit the subscribe button if you want to see more content from me. Make sure to hit the like button if you like this video. If you have any more comments or questions, please put them in the comment section below and I will be happy to respond. So I hope you found this helpful. I need to prepare to go to MegaCon, so with that I will see you in my next video. Bye!